Minister and the Chancellor preparing to meet the head of the Office for Budget Responsibility. That's the independent watchdog for the UK's public finances.
So Downing Street are denying these are emergency talks, but they, of course, follow a tumultuous week in the financial markets in the wake of the government's mini-budget. Finance lecturer at Kingston University, Louise Cooper, joins us this morning. Good morning, Louise. It's been an extraordinary few days for the city. Have you ever known anything quite like this?
Well, we had the global financial crisis, of course, and we had the pandemic, and we had Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So we've pretty much had three global financial and economic crises in 15 years, which is one of the problems the government is facing.
None of those, Louise, just none of those were self-inflicted. This feels like this has been completely self-engineered by the Prime Minister and a Chancellor.
I wouldn't say completely. If you look at borrowing costs for governments, they are soaring. They are increasing all over the world. If you look at sterling, it's collapsed against the pound, but so have the euro and yen. Pretty much every currency is very weak against the dollar. So, yes, the sort of tipping point was that, but there were problems already. And again, the Chancellor and the new Prime Minister should have been aware that financial markets were having a really tough time getting to grips with high inflation and higher interest rates, and they should have factored in to what they announced at their supposedly mini budget, which isn't a mini budget. I think we should rename it a maxi budget because it had the biggest tax cuts since the 70s. So they should have known when they're coming out and announcing we need to borrow way more money, because that's effectively what is likely to happen. They should know that the environment in which they were going to say that was going to be difficult.
And what is it going to take now, do you think, Louise, to calm this turmoil down? Obviously, we know that they're in talks today with the Office of Budget Responsibility, but there are those who are saying, well, hold on, this should have already happened.
Good sign they are talking to the OBR. Should have happened a long time ago. It should have happened before the maxi budget was announced. And the OBR, if given the correct numbers, can turn things around, can mark the government's taxation and spending plans. They can do it quite quickly. In the global in the COVID crisis, they sort of assessed Rishi Sunak's emergency packages, and they really were emergency packages. They assessed and turned around and wrote a report on that within 2 weeks. So it can be done if they're given the numbers. November the 23rd is frankly ridiculous. They should be giving the numbers to the OBR. My concern is they don't have the numbers, but they should be giving the numbers to the OBR so the OBR can turn around and give the report as quickly as possible. And they can do it. I mean, what I would say is how bizarre that we've got this very important watchdog on government finances. It was set up in 2010 by the Conservative Party, and yet we have a Conservative Party that are ignoring it. And even in July, pre our mini-maxi budget, whatever you want to call it, the OBR was already saying that debt in this country was unsustainable in the long term, and that public debt, our national debt, has tripled the level since 2000. Yeah. So already they were warning, and yet it was ignored.
It is a worrying time, isn't it? Can you just put it in perspective for people? Because it is really unsettling, isn't it? People are worried about mortgages going up, the cost of living, energy bills going up. You know, we know that that's happening tomorrow as well. There's a sort of real unsettling factor, a real unease, unhappiness with what's going on. You know, is there a way of sort of putting it into perspective for people, or is it just doom and gloom, whichever way you look?
This is the reason why we saw consumer confidence figures out in the last week that were the worst we have ever seen. I mean, I'm afraid there is a probability that their go for growth strategy might work. I mean, it won't work. It might work. How high is that probability? I don't know. Many would say not that high. But the downside to it, which is we spend even more money, we indebt ourselves even more, and these overseas American pension funds, European pension funds, then turn around and say, actually, we don't really want to lend to the UK anymore. Or if we are going to lend to the UK, it's going to be a lot higher interest rates. And that is really quite damaging for a country when you've got 2.4 trillion of debt. So the key thing is for us as a country to give confidence in our responsibility for managing the economy, the Bank of England and the Chancellor. And at the moment, I'm not sure any international investor, all those people who lend us the money so we can spend more than we get in tax, I'm not sure, looking at the events of the last week, that many of them would say, actually, I have full confidence in the economic management of the UK.
It is a bleak picture indeed. Louise Cooper, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks very much for taking us through that.